When one considers the issue of listening, then it's clear that both listening and feedback are really concerned with communication. And like all things, the issue of communication is really deeply affected by our intent. We know that in any situation, you can either construct your intent on what you're trying to get, or you can construct your intent on what you can give. This idea of constructing your intent on what you can give is not about being nice. It's about being appropriate. It's about acting on the basis of what the situation requires of you, which means it's about acting either consistently with the generosity or the courage that's operative in the situation that you're in. And conversely, therefore, the intent to get is to act consistently either with the selfishness or the cowardice that's consistent with the situation that you're in. This idea of acting appropriately, giving each situation its due, is also predicated on another skill, which is the ability to see things as they are. You cannot say or do what is appropriate if you don't see things as they are. And seeing things as they are requires unconditional listening. It means you're able to suspend your agenda for the agenda of the other in the situation that you're in. Practically, this means the following: you cultivate receptive attention. You suspend your own agenda and forego what you wanted as an outcome. You decide on what you wanted as an outcome and then you put it aside. You quieten your own internal dialogue and give absolute attention to the other person, and you learn how to be present in the moment. Now, in order to get some depth to this, it's useful to understand the distinction between predatory and receptive attention. Because when you're listening, you're really trying to cultivate receptive attention. The difference between them is the following. Predatory attention is consistent with the phrase, "he is looking at me." And that is really consistent with the intent to take. If you commented on somebody's behavior and you were saying they are looking at me, there's almost an implied threat. It is like they're trying to intrude into you. They're trying to get something from you. You almost want to ask the person, well, what do you want? Whereas if the person's listening to you, it's a far more pleasurable experience. The sense is not that they're trying to intrude into you, but they're allowing you into them. That's what we mean by receptive attention. And listening is consistent with the idea of receptive attention. Now, there are a number of implications to this. When your attention is operating in a predatory way, you are outwardly gathered. And it's because you're trying to get stuff from the world. If I want something from the other's ability to withhold what I want gives the other power over me, which means I am, if you like, my attention is outwardly gathered. Whereas when I shift my attention from what I'm trying to get to, how I can give, the other loses their control over me and I become inwardly gathered. It also then stands to reason if I'm trying to get stuff from the world, I'm sort of standing out. I'm reaching into the world to get what I want. Whereas when I'm inwardly gathered, I, in a sense, stand in. I stand back from the world. So when I'm outwardly gathered, my demeanor becomes competitive. In a sense, I take space. I compete for space. Whereas when I'm listening and when I'm using this receptive attention, my demeanor becomes far more collaborative. In a sense, I step back from the space. I make space. When I'm here to get, when my attention is operating in a predatory way, my focus is on outcome over process. I just want the result. Whereas when I'm here to give, my focus is on the other way around. It's on process over outcome. The register of my internal dialogue, in other words, my sort of commentary on the world that I'm in, when my attention is predatory, is very judgmental because I'm constantly judging the world that I'm in against my expectations. Whereas when my attention is here to give, rather, when my attention is receptive, the register of my internal dialogue is far more curious. It's interested. It's not about trying to get something. It's just trying to understand what's going on. The further thing to this, therefore, is that when a person's attention is operating in a predatory way, the internal dialogue is noisy and loud. I mean, there's a lot of commentary going on the inside. Whereas a person whose attention is operating in a receptive way, there's not a lot of commentary going on the inside. They really don't allow their own prejudices to get in the way of what they're trying to understand when they're listening. So it's therefore very useful to understand how to quieten one's internal dialogue. And there's a very simple technique that one can use to achieve this. You can just look around the room that you're in and notice any three colors successively. So like, for instance, anything that's black or anything that's blue or anything that's green. And then close your eyes and listen to the very furthest sound that you can hear. Now listen to a sound in the middle distance. And now listen to the sound that's as closest to you as you can identify. It might even be something in your own body, your own breathing or whatever. And once you've done that, you rest your attention on your breath for a few breaths. The effect of this is that you become inwardly quiet. That puts you in the position to listen. The first rule of listening is seek to understand and not to be understood. Reflect back to the person what they're saying by saying things like, so you're saying that, or so you think that, or so you feel that. Now, when you say phrases like this, I mean, you're not actually saying anything new to the person, but it is helpful to them because, first of all, they feel understood because they hear you repeating to them what they've just said, but also it allows them to clarify. They could say something, well, I mean, I don't actually, it's not quite like this, it's more like that. The second phrase, so you think that, you basically sort of reflecting back kind of thoughts that the person seems to be having about the situation. So the person might be saying something about a particular kind of person you might recognize, but it seems like the person's prejudiced against this kind of person. So you could reflect that back to them. Feelings, you ask the person, how do you feel? And they say, fine. I mean, clearly they're not fine. So it's then quite appropriate to say something to the person like, well, it looks like you're feeling a bit annoyed. So that's what so when you reflect back not just content, you reflect back feeling. So bear this in mind, go and have a conversation with somebody now, have a listening exercise. Find somebody you can work with, maybe ask them to watch the video, and then with that person, take turns to discuss your partner's previous weekend. Assume that something really important happened that your partner has a lot to learn from. Use your listening skills to help your partner find the jewel of insight from their previous weekend. Thank you very much.